Welcome to tonight's program, the John and Marcia Goldman Foundation Lecture with Isabel Allende. I want to, first of all, express my heartfelt thanks on behalf of all of us at the JCCSF to John and Marcia for their extraordinary generosity and support. Thank you. It is not any exaggeration to say that these events don't happen without the support of people like John and Marcia, and we are deeply grateful for the continuing support of not just what we do here at the JCCSF, but Bay Area cultural life. It is crucial work, and we thoroughly appreciate it. We will take your questions following tonight's conversation. Please raise your hand. A microphone will come to you. And also, please join us in the atrium following the programming for a book signing and dessert reception. We will not be personalizing any books this evening in order to keep the line moving quickly. So please be ready with your book, and Isabel will be happy to sign them. Now for the program. As I'm sure all of you know, Isabel Allende has published 20 books. Among them, The House of Spirits, Of Love and Shadows, Paula, and City of the Beasts. And though she's tried her hand at a number of genres, memoir, young adult adventure stories, historical fiction, it was something of a surprise to hear that her latest work is mystery. But Ripper is an unmistakably Isabel Allende book. It features a strong, independent woman and has the pervasive action of social justice, plus a rogues gallery of colorful characters. And it's set right here in our fair city. Isabel is, of course, also known for her foundation, which is dedicated to the empowerment of women and girls worldwide. Tonight, she's in conversation with my friend and colleague, JCCSF's own Director of Arts and Ideas, Barbara Lane. Please join me in welcoming Isabel and Barbara to the JCCSF stage.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
And thank you so much for coming back. We're so happy to have you here. It's a pleasure. So let's dive right in. 3 years ago, I understand you were ready to retire.
Yeah, I was fed up with life.
But instead we have this new book, a mystery, a different genre. What happened?
Well, when I said that I was going to retire, my agent panicked. It seems that I support the agency all by myself. And so she said, no, you have to write a book with your husband. And my husband is a mystery writer called William C. Gordon. Please buy his books. And of course, I had to adjust to his genre because I'm a much better writer than him. He would not be able to write one of my books. And we really tried, but we ended up fighting like dogs. And by January 8th, 2012, the time when I usually start my books, I didn't have anything else. And that's how I landed up in this genre, which, by the way, it was so much fun, so much fun. I think that since Zorro, I had not had so much fun writing something.
Well, it shows. It shows in the book. As Barry said, there are colorful characters. There's a lot of intrigue. It was interesting to me that you, as he said also, you've written 20 books. You went to a mystery writers conference at Book Passage. And that's such a strange thing, because we think of you as an accomplished writer who knows what to do. So what did you learn there? What was that like?
Well, if I was going to make shoes, I would take a class. I don't know anything about mysteries, so I went to the conference as a student, and I learned a lot. Because in the conference, first of all, they have in the faculty, you have detectives, policemen, forensic doctors, people who specialize in guns. You can ask any question, and there's someone who will be a specialist there. All of Book Passage's conferences are great, but this one is particularly good. The other interesting thing is that the students are mostly women, and the loveliest people who only talk about murder. And they come up with stuff that you wouldn't believe. For example, if I inject a blood thinner to my victim and I stab her 13 times and hang her upside down in the shower, would the blood congeal in the bathtub? I couldn't come up with anything so original. So just the questions of the students gave me a lot of ideas for the book.
So if you ever wanted to commit a murder in real life, you now have all the
Willie's
information.
terrified. He doesn't eat at home anymore. And he's always looking over his shoulder. Yeah.
You mentioned book passage. Isn't that where you met Willie? Or?
No, I met him in San Jose.
Ah.
But he has been all his life very good friend of the Petticellis, the owners. And he introduced me when I came to live with him. So I've been with Book Passage almost as long as I have been with Willie.
What writers did you read in preparation for writing this mystery? Because we all know the Scandinavian writers.
Of course, that's what I read.
You did?
Because this was in 2012,
right.
And that was what everybody was reading. And usually I don't read thrillers. I'm scared of violence. But I was preparing for this. And so I read them, and I realized that it would have been very hard for me to write anything like in that tone. Very dark, very violent, very brutal. So I started writing something like all my books. But it's funny because on January 8th, I spent the whole day in my casita working, and then Willie called me around 7, and he said, well, you've worked enough. Come, let's have a glass of wine. I prepared some fish. So I close my casita, I leave all the spirits and characters in there, and I go to have a glass of wine with my husband. And he says, how was your day? Oh, I said, wonderful. It was wonderful. I started like developing the atmosphere of San Francisco and North Beach and the coffee shops. And he said, no. He said, you're writing a mystery. You need a corpse in the first page. And true enough, that's what you need. There is an agreement between the reader and the author. You give them corpses. And corpses and clues. But at the same time, as an author, you have to distract the reader so that the reader doesn't find the clues. And if he or she guesses who the assassin is, then you as an author lost. It's a game.
Well, you definitely open this novel with a bang. Not only is there the foreshadowing of a death, I believe in the very first sentence, but right on that first page is a very grisly, very graphic crime scene.
Yeah, but tongue-in-cheek. I mean...
Well, do you want to tell everybody and why you made the decision to open it that way? I mean, you said
everybody thinks it was my husband's idea because this is the kind of stuff that Willie would come up with. But it wasn't. The body has a baseball bat inserted, you can imagine where. And
page 1, in a high school, by the way.
High school.
Yeah.
Well, it's a school. Actually, it's fourth graders who find the corpse.
Better yet. So, just briefly, the premise of the book, it's a crime novel. There's a series of murders, and there's a young girl on the path of this serial killer. She and her friends are playing an online game to solve the Jack the Ripper murders in 1880s England. Now, who initiated you to the world of online games, and how did that become central to this book?
I had no idea that online games or role-playing games existed. So when I started the book, I was completely lost. Most mystery writers plan the novel before, and they know exactly where they are going. I didn't have an idea. I only knew that it was San Francisco 2012. That's all I knew. And why San Francisco 2012? Because it was easy. It was the year I was writing, so I didn't have to research the year. And it was the area where I have lived for 26 years, so I didn't need to research the area either. I thought the only thing I have to research is how to kill people. And that actually that you can Google. So it's really easy. What were we talking about?
We were talking...
I'm sorry, but I'm at the end of a really long book tour.
The online gaming world.
The gaming.
I
And
forgot.
so I was there with San Francisco and 2012 and nothing else. But I saw my granddaughter Andrea. She was a teenager then, now she's in college, she's a woman, but then she was very much like the protagonist of this book, like Amanda Martin. And she was playing alone in the kitchen and said, "What are you doing?" She was with dice and cards. She said, "I'm playing a role-playing game." And she explained that the 5 kids that were playing create a character, and the character plays the game. And the character has skills and limitations. And the idea is to hunt Jack the Ripper. And she's she was the game master. So I said, "Could we do this in San Francisco 2012? And she said, "Yeah, it could be anywhere." "And could I hunt somebody that is not exactly Jack the Ripper?" "Yeah, you can hunt your mother if you want." And so I thought, this is wonderful. And so my sleuths are 5 kids and a grandfather playing online. And because they are playing, they don't have the restrictions of the police. They don't have to follow any protocol. They don't have the bureaucracy, the red tape. Nothing. They just have imagination, intuition, and they are playing. And so when I was writing the book, I had that feeling that I was also playing to write the book. That was my role-playing game. And it worked well because it has that playful tone, but I had fun. Like Andrea was having fun in the kitchen with her Ripper.
So her mother, Indiana Jackson, who's a healer, is, we learn on page 1 that she's going to be murdered. And she and Amanda are sort of co-protagonists maybe, but she's not your normal sort of dark, brooding Scandinavian. Tell us about Indiana Jackson and how you came to that character and why she appealed to you.
Indiana is based on someone I know. Sometimes I look for models, for real people that I can use as models for the characters. And Indiana is a healer. She's tall, blonde, with big breasts, very sexy. She's not aware of her sexiness, but men adore her. Everybody loves her. Dogs adore her, everybody. And she's sort of a naive hippie at a time, 50 years after the hippies. And she has this huge heart. She's not my kind of character because I usually have characters that are women that are strong survivors. This one is always getting in trouble because she can never even think about the possibility that someone would think badly or try to harm her. The model for her was a healer that I know. She's Argentinian, and she has helped a lot my husband, who was ill for a while. Don't ask me for the email because I've given her email so much that she can't take more clients now. And she's not exactly the tall blonde, but the tall blonde is who I want to be. And I don't have many of those in my books because then I get angry at them, and around page 40 I kill them. But this time she was just such a good person that she survived almost to the very end.
So Indiana is based on someone you know. As I said, there are a number of vivid characters in this book. There's a Navy SEAL, there's a San Francisco trust funder. Having lived in San Francisco for many years myself, a lot of these people seem to be based on real
people
characters.
You know. I know.
I'm just guessing. So are you open about, I think the Navy SEAL you actually thank at the end of the book, the inspiration for that character. Tell us about him a little bit.
Navy SEALs have secret missions, and they never talk about their work, and you don't identify them either. They are very secretive. But he's a retired Navy SEAL. He had just retired, and he was willing to talk to me. So I took a plane and went to Washington and spent 3 days with him. And although it is not exactly his story, I could sort of, like a vampire, suck his blood. And I got, the body language, the haircut, the pictures, the stories, the way he talks, his set of values, so different from mine, that I would have never been able to create a believable character without having him being so generous.
As someone who lived in North Beach for a long time, I think I recognize Millie, the
Yeah,
photographer.
of course.
So I don't know if many of you know her, but tell everybody about Millie and how
Millie is a little old lady. People think that she's over 100 years old. And she has been in North Beach since the beatniks. And she has a Polaroid camera and goes around photographing characters or people. And she charges, I think, $1 or $2 or $5 to take your Polaroid. She looks like those little witches in fairy tales, very small with a nose that touches the chin and a hood. She's an incredible character. And I know about her and I have met her, but I didn't need her in my book, so she wasn't in the book at the beginning, but then at the end, I needed a clue. How would this person know this? We need a photograph. And there I had Millie. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you know, the universe conspires to help.
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
So San Francisco is very much a character in this book.
Not only in my book, in many, many mysteries.
Well, Dashiell Hammett.
Of course, and in many movies and TV series. You know why? Because it has fog.
Ah, the fog.
Any city with fog is wonderful.
Actually, Samuel Taylor Park is in the book out in West Marin, but I'm wondering the places that you visit in the book and that your characters have their escapades. The Dolphin Club, Cafe Puccini in North Beach, are these all places you knew and loved, or did you discover new things about the city as you were writing the book?
I think talking to people, I discovered more about people who live in San Francisco and why they love it and where they go. For example, I didn't know that people adopt a coffee shop and they are completely loyal to that coffee shop. I mean, it's so weird. They would never go to another one. It would be like betraying your mother or something. That kind of stuff you really need to talk to people to find out, because unfortunately I live in Marin. And I say unfortunately because, God, that's boring. Nothing happens in Marin.
It's a trade-off. Did you find a favorite coffee shop that you loved?
Yeah, but I can't say it.
Okay.
I'm not supposed to advertise.
Okay. Let's have a little taste of Ripper. And if you don't mind, I know you have a selection you've prepared to read. Oh. If you could set it up for us so that people know where we are, and we'd love to hear you.
Well, it's difficult to set it up, but this is one of the crimes. And there are several crimes, and they're all very, very different. So the police doesn't think that it's a serial killer, because serial killers tend to use the same modus operandi, and they select the same kind of victims. So, and in this case, everything is different. The victims have nothing in common. The way they are killed have nothing in common either. So it's the kids who discover that they are confronting a serial killer. And this is one of the murders. Just 2 minutes, bear with me. Rachel Rosen sensed something behind her, a shadowy presence like a bad memory. She stood motionless, engulfed by the same fear she had felt in the garage. She tried to control her imagination. She did not want to end up like her mother, who had spent her last years locked in her apartment, never going out, convinced the Gestapo were waiting on the other side of the door. Old people get scared, she concluded, but I'm not like my mother. She thought she heard a rustling of paper or plastic and turned towards the kitchen door. She could make out a shadow in the doorway, a blurred, bloated, faceless figure moving slowly and awkwardly like an astronaut on the moon. A hoarse, terrible howl came from the pit of her stomach, surging up through her chest like a blazing fire. She saw the fearsome creature advance toward her. A second scream stuck in her throat, and she ran out of air. Rachel Rosen stepped backward, bumped into the table, and fell sideways, shielding her head with her arms. She lay on the floor, begging in a whisper for him not to hurt her, offering money or anything else of value in the house. Trembling, she crawled under the table and curled up, bargaining and weeping. For the 3 never-ending minutes, she was still conscious. She did not even feel the pinprick of the needle in her thigh.
Oh, Isabel Allende reading from Ripper. Wow. It's so interesting to hear you read that because you write in Spanish and then your work is translated. So how does that feel different for you?
Well, this book should have been written in English because it happens here to American characters. There's not one Chilean in the whole book. And all the research is in English. So I had to translate all the research into Spanish and have my American characters speak Spanish to write the book. And then the translators had to put everything back into English.
So do you think you'd write another book in English? Because you haven't yet, is my understanding. All of your books have been written in Spanish.
All of
do you
them,
think you're ready to do that? Might that happen?
Non-fiction might be, but fiction happens in the belly and not in the brain, really. And I think that all the important things in my life still happen in Spanish. I count in Spanish. I pray when I'm terrified in Spanish.
Do you dream in Spanish?
I dream in Spanish, and I make love in Spanish. I would feel ridiculous panting in English, frankly. Fortunately, my husband thinks that he speaks Spanish.
Do you use the same translators every time?
I used the same translator for all my previous books, but Maya's notebook and this book were translated by different people because my old translator is now really old. She's like 86. And she decided that she could not continue working.
So how was that, working with someone new? Do you get involved in the translation? Are you part of the process?
I try to read as they are translating. And most of the time they improve the book. They find a lot of mistakes that then I have time to correct in Spanish. And often they tone down things. You know, in Chile there's no such a thing as politically incorrect. So you say things as they are. And so in English it doesn't work very well. It sounds very rude. Sometimes jokes have to be tuned down a little bit.
I mentioned earlier, and we'll talk a little bit about the work of your foundation, but in this book, your whole sense of social justice is present, and you make some
Where is it present?
critical comments about the prison population in the United States. Yes, you do. It's in there, and that's the Isabel Allende.
I forgot. You know, the person that the author is always between the lines. I try never to preach, not to give messages, and this I had in mind that it was just fun to read. And there you are,
well,
social justice. Social justice in between.
It snuck in, right? It just snuck in.
It just happens.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned your translator getting older. Your mother, who I understand, does she still write to you every day, or do you still write to her every day?
We both write every day.
And she's now in her 90s, 93 years old. That's such a powerful relationship that you have with
My mother is immortal, unfortunately. She will live forever.
We've talked before about your...
Not that I don't love her, it's just that, gosh. I want to write an erotic novel and I have to wait until she dies. By the time by the time she does, I won't have any hormones left. So...
Wait a minute, you've written erotic books. Aphrodite is...
But mildly erotic.
I can't wait.
I mean, something that my mother can read. You know, she's very funny when she reads any sex scene in my books, and they are not very explicit. My mother says, "Why do you write these things? People will think that you've done it."
So, in Spanish. So your mother writes you and you write her. Your son was very much involved in this book. I think he revised it. Does that mean he edited it? Or
No.
How was he involved?
Actually, my whole office was involved because they helped me a lot. And my son takes, I just write, and I don't take much care of dates, numbers. I can only multiply by 5. So all my people are born either in a 0 number or a 5 number. So it's 1940 or 1945, because otherwise I get completely lost. And my son is the one who puts everything in perspective and says, okay, mother, here's a person that has lived for 20 years and he's still 18. So he finds all that, and all the technology, the games, all that he helps. But also, Sarah in my office, and in the acknowledgements, I thank her, is a wonderful person who works in my office. And she found the Navy SEAL. At a certain point, someone is kidnapped, and I needed to hide that person. She found the perfect place. An abandoned winery that looks like a medieval castle that is right in front of my house, and I had never seen it because it's hidden. And she found it. Then she found a sea captain, one of the captains of the ferry, to give me a tour to the little inlets in the bay that we don't see from the land. You can only find them if you know where they are in shallow boats, because the water is very shallow in certain places, so the Coast Guard doesn't get there. And everybody's growing marijuana, there's crack houses everywhere. It's a wonderful place. I mean, for a novel like this, it's the perfect place. She found it.
Oh, wow.
So I had all the office working.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the foundation for a moment, because the foundation is about empowering girls and women throughout the world, and it was inspired, I believe, by your daughter Paula, who died of a rare blood disease in 1992, and then you were in India, and you had an experience that I believe prompted you to start the foundation and start the work. Would you describe that for our audience?
Well, after I wrote the book Paula, which is about my daughter, I set aside all the money that came from that book. I didn't want to touch it, thinking that I would use it to honor Paula somehow. And I didn't know what. And then we went to India with my husband. I was very depressed at the time, in a sort of writer's block. And my husband thought that in India I would be inspired. And we went with a very good friend of mine that knows India very well, Tabra, who is a jeweler. And we were in a road, in one of those rural roads in the middle of nowhere with a terrible heat. And we had a driver, and the engine was very hot. And we stopped in the middle of nowhere. There was an acacia tree and some women there. And so while the engine cooled a little, Tabra and I went to the women. And we had bought some bracelets in a market. No language in common. But in many places in the world, people just get very close. Not like here that you have this personal space that should not be invaded. No, in other places, people are here in your face. And so these women came and they started touching Tabra's hair. She had dyed her hair red. And then the bracelet, we gave them the bracelets. And when we were leaving, because the driver was honking, we were leaving, one of the women gave me a little package, a sort of parcel like this of rags that weighed nothing, and gave it to me. And I thought she was trying to give me something back for the bracelets. And I said, no, it's not necessary, don't worry about it. But she just put it in my hands. And I opened these rags, and inside was a newborn baby. And the driver came running, and he gave the baby back to the woman and pushed me into the car. And when we were driving, and I sort of reacted, I said, why would she give me the baby? And the driver said, it's a girl who wants a girl. And that was the moment when I decided what to do with the money I had in that savings account and with the rest of the income that I would have for other books for the rest of my life. Empowerment of girls and women. Mm.
And so I'm just going to add, because you and I were discussing this before, V-Day is coming up, which is a very powerful day, February 14th. that speaks to the empowerment of women and girls who've lived with violence. And we here at the JCC are honoring V-Day with a number of different activities, film and self-defense classes, and you can find out about it online. But we're so pleased and honored to be able to participate. And I know you know Eve Ensler, who started V-Day, and you've...
She's wonderful, and she's funny and vibrant and a wonderful person. And she came with the idea of 1 billion people rising all over the world on that day, February 14th, to celebrate women and to demonstrate for justice and against violence for women.
So just fantastic. Couple of other things before we move on to audience questions. Your books, whatever genre you're writing in, are all so vivid, and so many times when I'm reading an Isabel Allende book, I can see it in my mind's eye. So the obvious question has to do with movies, Hollywood. Have they come calling?
Yeah, actually for this one they have. I have like 3 producers that are after the option. You know, I don't want even to get in there because each contract, Hollywood contract, is this thick. It looks like a telephone book. You need to hire lawyers to just read the contract because between the lines, they want everything. They want the rights to do the movie and everything else they can do with that, pancakes, anything. In the universe, all over the universe, and universes to be discovered. I'm not exaggerating, this is in the contract. With the technology that exists and other technologies that might be discovered in the future. But that's not all. They also want the copyright of the characters. So if I use my own characters in the future for another book, I have to pay them a royalty? I can't sign that kind of contract.
Wow.
So we spent 4 years with a contract for Daughter of Fortune, and at the end I refused to sign it. So now, when they are coming for Ripper, I said, have a reasonable contract. But the people who put the money, I mean, the directors are reasonable, but the producers who invest the money, they want everything. And they pay nothing to the creators, to the scriptwriter, to the author, who provide the story. They wouldn't have a movie without the story. They want everything for nothing.
So it's not happening anytime soon.
Greed moves the world.
It's impossible to talk to you without talking about Chile because it's.
But Chile is not in this book.
It's not in this book.
Don't worry,
it's not there.
There.
We're going to come back, but we've moved on. And the last time you were here, we talked about your memoir, Some of Our Days, and we spoke a lot about Chile. So I have to ask you about your reaction to Michelle Bachelet's victory last year.
Well, I went to Chile to vote for her, of course. Michelle Bachelet is a wonderful person. I know her personally. I can't say I'm her friend, but every time I go to Chile, I see her. And I think she's going to do a great government because she already was very, very popular in the first time that she was president, and she didn't have the Congress with her. This time she was elected, I would say, in spite of the political parties, because the political parties that supported her didn't have any candidates, they were disorganized, and nobody believes in the political parties anymore. They believe in her. And so she won because she is Michelle Bachelet.
And that she was a victim of the Pinochet regime, as was her family, as was your family, so that must be.
But she never talks about that.
She doesn't.
She's very, very careful. She never talks about the fact that her father was assassinated. Her father was a general, and he was assassinated by his peers because he did not comply with the coup. And she was arrested with her mother, and both were tortured. She was 15 years old. And after that, they left the country. They lived in exile. She learned, she became a doctor in Germany. She speaks several languages. She's very, very smart. And she never talks about the past. She talks about the future. She's a person with no resentment of any kind. She's a very kind person. It's very interesting.
So you've, in your books, you've explored the gold rush, Zorro, aphrodisiacs. You've written a young adult book. Now this, a memoir. You're working on something new. What's next?
I started on January 8th something. In the middle of this crazy book tour, I left that day clean an empty in my calendar so that I could just put something down. And by the end of February, when I'm done with the book tour, I hope to go back to those pages and see if there's something there waiting for me.
Okay, well, we can't wait to see. Whatever it is, we'll be there with you. And I think it's your turn now. We're going to turn to our audience, and we will have Andy and Jordan with microphones. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and they'll come to you. We're dying to hear your questions. And
can we have more light in the house? I can't see very well. I don't know if it's because I'm tired or my contacts are blurred.
Don't be shy, because you'll want, in your car on the way home, you'll be thinking of your questions. So, question, anybody for Isabel Allende on one of the books?
Our first question over here on your guys' right, about halfway up.
What?
I was just going to ask, now that you're an expert on the mystery genre, if there are any authors of mysteries that you especially admire?
Yes, I sleep with one. But I admire him for other reasons too. Try it, William C. Gordon.
And that's in order.
Actually, I'm no expert in this genre. I think that it was impertinent of me, pretentious, to try to write a mystery without being a specialist in the genre, without reading a lot and without knowing a lot. But I had fun, and I hope that I think my readers are having fun, because the book is doing extremely well in Europe. And it's #1 in the bestseller list in Italy, in the Netherlands, in all the Spanish-speaking countries. So people just love murder. It's really funny. Yeah.
Next question on your left. Hello. So this is the first I've ever heard of this, but apparently you have a habit of starting something new every January 8th. And I just wondered, what's the origin of that personal ritual, and why do you need it?
Well, right now I need it because otherwise I would be procrastinating forever if I didn't have a day to start, because my life is very complicated. But at the beginning, it started because I wrote The House of the Spirits on January 8th. I started January 8th, 1991. I was living as a political refugee in Venezuela, and we got a phone call from Chile that my grandfather was dying. And I couldn't go back to say goodbye to him. And I started a sort of spiritual letter for him, telling him that I remembered everything he had ever told me. He was a great storyteller. And to prove to my grandfather that I remembered, I started with the first anecdote of my childhood, and that was about my Aunt Rosa, who we had a sepia photograph of my Aunt Rosa on the piano. She had been my grandfather's first fiancée, and she died in mysterious circumstances. And they said that she was beautiful like a mermaid. And mermaids in fairy tale books had green hair. So that's why in The House of the Spirits, Rosa has green hair. And that book was a very fortunate book. It paved the way for the rest of my books. So I started the second one on the same date for superstition, and so I did with the third. And then after that, my life got complicated, so now I just keep the date. And it's good because everybody in my family and in my office and everywhere, people know that starting January 8th, I'm not available. Yeah, it helps a lot. This is very exceptional that I am doing promotion for a book in January. Usually it's by the end of the year when I'm done with the book.
Our next question over here on your right.
Hi, I've read many of your books, and I just finished Maya's Notebook, which I loved. Your writing is very lyrical, and this is not so much a question, but I just wanted to tell you that when you described Maya's becoming acquainted with the dog, Fakurine.
No, fucking.
Yeah,
the name is fucking.
Fucking.
Yeah.
Anyway, you talked about two words that I really took to heart because I love my little dog, and you talked about their communicating with telepathic Esperanto. And I just wanted you to know that that really stuck with me, and I just so enjoy your style of writing.
Thank you. I'm into dogs. You know,
you have to be
Yeah, I love animals in general, but especially dogs. And in this book, I have a dog called Attila.
A fabulous dog.
And he's a war dog that has been wounded in the war, like the Navy SEAL. And never in the book I say that he is the Navy SEAL's dog. They are companions. They are not, nobody owns anybody here. And in that book, Fucking, that dog, the idea is that she's in the south of Chile, this island, and this stray dog follows her. And so she says, shoo, shoo, fucking dog. And people think that he's called Fucking. And so, and so the name sticks, and that's the name of the dog.
The dog in this book is great, and a hero.
A hero, yeah.
Next question on your left.
Oh, hi. I'm just curious, you joke a little bit about how everyone loves murder, and obviously you had a lot of fun writing this book. And I'm curious, did you get in a more serious way, did you get a better sense, having written this, of why people are so obsessed and love murder so much?
Well, I think that this is a very, very popular genre. And there are people who only read mysteries, just as there are people who only read romance novels. It's very formulaic, and it's safe, a safe read, in the sense that we know the rules of engagement here. And the reader knows what to expect, and the author knows what to give. Usually, readers of mysteries are very savvy readers. They have a lot of experience. They can catch the villain in page 4, more or less. So you have to be really good to distract them. So I think that it's a very safe read. And also, it doesn't require much thinking from the reader. We will enjoy the ride together. That's how I feel.
Our next question over here on your right.
You said that your books are very popular in Europe now. In Germany, it's bestseller in Italy. I'm just curious, are they translated directly from the Spanish, or are they translated from the English here into the Italian and the German, etc.?
No, they are translated from the Spanish. My books are translated like 35 languages, and I have no idea if the translations are good or not. Sometimes I don't even know if they are my books that they're translating. Because they send me some books that I can't read the alphabet. I have no idea. And my picture is nowhere there. So maybe it's not even my book. I think probably the story is conveyed into other languages, but who knows if the humor or the subtleties of the language. Sometimes I spend hours thinking of a good noun that could replace 3 adjectives to clean up a sentence. It's important. Language is very important for me. That's why I write in Spanish. Is that translated? I don't know. No idea.
Next question is all the way back here.
Hello from all the way back here.
Yeah.
Would you ever set a novel in Venezuela?
In Venezuela, I have 2 set in Venezuela. I have Eva Luna and the stories of Eva Luna. It's very Venezuelan books. Are you Venezuelan? No. Why are you asking?
Well, I read Paula and love Paula, and I remember that your life in some ways was very unhappy there at times, and I just wondered if, it seems a rich vein in many ways, and I just wondered to what extent you had or might mind that, or if your unhappiness there was something that would block that, other than in Paula, of course, you talked about those years some.
I'm sorry that I gave the impression that I had been unhappy in Venezuela. There were very hard times, but not unhappy times. Hardship doesn't necessarily mean unhappiness. I became a writer in Venezuela. I owe to Venezuela a lot. I came in the 70s after the military coup to Caracas. Chile at the time was a somber country that had gone through, first of all, it was a poor country at the time, and it had gone through 3 years of political, economic, and social crisis, a brutal military coup, and brutal repression. it was a country that was afraid. We lived in terror. And I go to Venezuela, the second richest country in the world, green, abundant, generous, tropical, with the most beautiful women in the world. They win all the beauty pageants. And everybody was into having fun. Any excuse was good for a party. Everybody knows how to dance. You would spend the day in the beach. I mean, it was great. The foreigners were working. The Venezuelans were having a great time. And I learned there to let go. Let go of control, of punctuality, of responsibility, of that harshness in which I had been brought up, and started to see the world in Technicolor. And I think that all that really permeated my life and everything I write. So I owe that to Venezuela, absolutely. And I started writing there.
We'll take 2 more questions.
The next one over here on the right near the back.
So what is your memory of having dinner or having had that contact with Che? Or what was the impression that character made on your...
Che Guevara?
Che Guevara.
I never had dinner with him.
Okay. So that was used in the book.
No, it's in the, my stepfather it was in my parents' house, and he came. I wasn't invited. I was in the house. I got to see him, but I was not invited to the dinner.
Right, and the final question over here.
Yes.
I'm going to make it in Spanish.
Okay, I translate.
Okay. ¿Qué piensa de que recientemente prohibieron leer su libro La Casa de los Espíritus en algunas escuelas?
What do I think that my book, The House of the Spirits, has been banned in some schools, in one school really, in North Carolina, but I think in other schools as well. You know, it takes one parent to take a book out of the reading list in a school. And in North Carolina, a parent objected to the sex in the House of the Spirits. They don't object to the violence, never, just the sex. Love is what is objectable. And so the book was banned, and a teacher, Mary Kent Whitaker, initiated a campaign, a real campaign. And her husband quit his job to help her in this campaign. And they have moved the Board of Education, the other parents, everybody. And now it's on hold. The book is on hold. It has gone through all the committees, and all of them have approved the book. But it still needs the final approval of I don't know who. And it's still waiting. Now, the sales of the House of the Spirits are soaring. And all the kids are reading it. So now in the school, so for this parent, I'm going to write a letter to the parent to thank her, really, because this is what I need in every school in America.
Yes.
The minute you forbid something, that's when it's interesting.
Absolutely.
That's when it's interesting. I just came back from Denver, and now marijuana is approved in Denver, and I thought everybody must be smoking pot. No one is. The same guys who were smoking before and were desperate to get it, now can get it, so it's not interesting anymore.
I want to remind you that Isabel will sign books in the atrium. She will not personalize books. Bear that in mind. Thanks too much for all of you.
And by the way, we can also have pictures, but I can't pose for the pictures, so they have to be flying. Okay?
Okay, Isabel Allende, thank you.
Thank you.